Well, I was out of town last month. I had one of our incredible young adults who was in our church, and she was watching over our house while we were gone. And of course, you know what this means. You know, when you have someone watch over your house, she took time to check our mail for us and collect any packages, water the plants. I've got some plants in my back porch that I need water, feed the dogs, feed the cats, you know, the feral cats that are around our neighborhood. We feed them. We're that neighbor. And so feed the cats, all of that. And so on that first night, she sends me a text message and she said, "Hey, did you want to leave the front porch light on?" And I mentioned to her, I said, "Well, listen, I left it on for you because if I don't, the front porch can kind of be dark if you don't have the light on." And so she texted me back and she said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, you can turn it off or on. It's completely up to you." And she texted back and she said, "How about we turn it off?" She said, "Because it's termite swarming season." Some of y'all know this. You turned all your lights off, you know? Don't tell the criminals in town that probably the best time to go into houses is during termite swarming season. I hope that you've never had termites. My prayer is that you've never had termites. I've known families who they tell horror stories, not because swarming season was outside their house, it's because they had a swarming season inside their house. And I've seen the pictures, and this is just little damage. This is just what begins to happen. And when you think about termites, you usually don't know that they're there until the damage is already done, right? On the surface of your house or your apartment or wherever you may live, everything looks fine. The walls look good. The floor seems steady. House seems solid. But deep underneath, in the walls or in the floor, something is quietly eating away at your structure. It's weakening the integrity of your home, and I've never known termites to announce their presence. And so you might think, maybe you walk by and you go, "Oh, that's interesting. That floorboard feels a little bit weaker or a little squishier than it used to." Or you might just think it's a cracked panel or maybe something with the foundation. But the real issue is what you can't see. It's an unseen, listen to me, an unseen active enemy. Now we know everything will grow old in our house. We know things, wood will rot if it's not treated and things like that. That's more of a passive type of thing. But what happens with things like termites is they are active, an active enemy that is unannounced in our homes doing real damage. Ladies and gentlemen, that is almost exactly how spiritual battle works. Most of us think that our problems in life are on the surface. We think that it's the people right in front of us. We think that it's the situations that we're dealing with. But what we're going to see is that Paul tells us in Ephesians 6 that our struggle is not against these things that we can see, but that our problem is against things that are unseen and that are very real and very dangerous. And if we don't recognize, ladies and gentlemen, what the real problem is, we will waste our time patching external circumstantial things in our life, these surface problems, while the foundation is slowly being eaten away by an unseen enemy. And so today I want us to start right here in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, and let's begin to talk about this unseen enemy. It says right here in Ephesians 6:10, it says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle," your struggle, "is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. See, much like the termites, this passage reminds us of something that many of us forget. And maybe that it's not because we don't believe that there's spiritual warfare, the devil, demons, angels. It's not that we don't believe that. It's because we can't see it. We don't see it. And because we don't see it, we don't prioritize it. And so we can't see this enemy, the devil and demons, and we can't see his schemes. Now we can see the effects of his schemes, but we don't see these spiritual forces that Paul is talking about in our daily lives. So instead of fighting a real battle, we end up fighting the visible things. We wind up fighting people. We wind up fighting in an argument. We wind up fighting, we focus in on the emotions, and I don't want to take away from that. But we find ourselves fighting circumstances and frustrations, and Paul pulls back the curtain, as we've seen here today. He pulls back this curtain in Ephesians 6 to remind us that there is a war happening behind what we can see. And if we don't learn to fight this battle, if you don't learn, then we will continue over and over losing because we're fighting the wrong battle. And so let's just look right here in your notes. I just put a key truth right there in the beginning, and I just want this to resonate with you this morning. I want it to resonate with you all week long, is that you can't win a spiritual battle with earthly methods or weapons. You can't win a spiritual battle with earthly methods or weapons. Now, I'm not saying that methods are wrong. But the fact of the matter is, you can't out-argue a demonic stronghold in someone's life. You can't out-schedule anxiety. I know people that say, well, I just need to work my calendar, and I've got to plan for this and plan for that. You can't resolve spiritual oppression with self-help and willpower. If you go to Barnes & Noble right now and you look at all the different stations that they have all these different genres and categories and things like that all throughout the store. And so you will see an entire section on self-help. Some of you guys love to get online, and whether it is your Instagram or your Facebook or your TikTok or whatever that you are looking through, and you love to like those self-help 1-minute videos. And the whole time it gives you a little buzz in the brain of something that you're going to do and forget 5 minutes later. But the reality is there is a battle taking place, a real spiritual battle. And so what this tells us is that the war isn't against flesh and blood, it's against spiritual forces that only can be resisted with, listen to me, spiritual weapons. Spiritual weapons. Truth. That's why we're here today. That's why we're in God's Word. Prayer. Righteousness. Faith and the power of the Holy Spirit. And so this morning, as we get ready to dive in and really pick this thing apart, if you've got your notes, I want you to write this down, that in order for us to fight correctly, that we've got to stand strong. And in order to do that, number one, we've got to identify this enemy. We've got to identify the right enemy. Before Paul ever tells us what kind of armor to wear, we're going to cover that next week, the armor of God. But before we even get into the armor of God, and before he tells us what to wear, he tells us what we're studying today is why we need it in the first place. Because there is an enemy working behind the scenes, and he's not passive. The enemy for your life is not passive. He's not hoping it's wrecked. He is actively trying to wreck it. He is scheming. And so look at what it says right here in chapter 6, verse 11. It says, put on the full armor of God. We'll talk about that later. So that you can take your stand. your stand against the devil's schemes. Now, I've got that word underlined up here on the screen because the Apostle Paul uses this word schemes, which we translate into English. But in the original Greek, it's this Greek word called methodia. It's where we get our English word method. And so this is how the devil's methods. It means methodological. It means a strategic deception. Here, listen to me. Satan does not come to us like we would see in cartoons with a pitchfork. Satan comes to you with a plan. Did you hear that? He's not here to wreck you and poke you with his pitchfork. He is trying to wreck you, and he has a plan to do so. He has strategic deception. He is the father of lies, as the book of John, chapter 8, verse 44 says. And his plan is to keep you distracted. He wants you distracted. He wants you discouraged. He wants you divided. He wants you defeated. He wants you doubting. And so here's the real problem. Most of us don't realize who we're actually fighting. Look at verse 12 right here. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. What does that mean, flesh and blood? It means that the struggles in your life are not people. Now, don't miss me saying this. The people in your life may be very much under the influence of the devil, but they are not the enemy. Some of you have people in your lives and they have put you through a living hell. And we are best reminded today that they are not the enemy, but they are a hostage of the enemy. I don't know if you've ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? It's where a hostage actually falls in love with their captor. It's a situation where they have been taken captive. This person gives them attention, all that kind of stuff. And so they begin to fall in love with their captor. I believe that there are people all over, people in our lives, family members, people that we go through, and they have a spiritual Stockholm Syndrome. That they are in love with the enemy, but they are still a hostage. And so I want you to remember that when that person is chewing you out and you feel your blood pressure rise and they are saying all types of hurtful, demonic things that are coming out of their mouth, I want you to take a deep breath and I want you to be reminded that my struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not this person. They might have spiritual Stockholm Syndrome. They might be in love with the devil and they might be in captivity to him, but they are still the hostage. We've got to identify our enemy. We think it's our spouse. We think it's our kids. We think it's our boss. We might even think it's our past. Oh, my past is my enemy. We might think that it's the person who hurt us. We might think that it's a political party. And man, let me tell you, that is what the media wants us to believe. But it is an enemy outside of all those things. And perhaps that you even think, maybe you're here today and Satan has so deceived you that he says the enemy is you. And that you've been wrestling with some of these things. It says our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Your real enemy isn't visible, but he is very personal. And he studies your patterns. He studies, he knows your weak spots. I mean, let's just think about it. This is not an enemy who doesn't have a way of understanding human nature. This is not an enemy who has studied human nature for years, or decades, or centuries. This is an enemy that has been tempting for millennia. You think that you're going to outsmart him without God's weapons? We got to think again. We've got to be ready. We've got to know who he is. If you were to ever visit the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, I want to put a picture up here. on the screen. One of the first things that the tour guides or even travel blogs will tell you. I had a friend who recently went and they were telling me about how they were given this information. They said that they tell you that when you go to the Sistine Chapel, they warn you of pickpockets. Have you heard this? Some of y'all have. Well, you're staring up in awe at Michelangelo's masterpiece on the ceiling. Someone could be quietly slipping your wallet right out of your pocket because you're doing this. You're looking up. You're enamored. You're in joy of everything that you've seen. You've traveled to the other side of the world to see this incredible painting. And all the time that you're doing it, someone is picking your pocket. And what they say is, be aware of what could happen. And here's what I see all the time. I see good Christians. I see people who, when they're going through life, they're going through church, they're worshiping. So they're looking at the magnificence of God and His Word and things like that. But they have forgotten that there is a devil who is silently picking their pocket. They're unaware. And so many times this happens where you are having your eyes on the beauty of Christ, but he's stealing not your wallet, but your peace. He's stealing your joy. He's stealing your focus, for crying out loud. He's stealing the church's unity. He's taking your confidence away from Christ. And let me tell you, the same way a pickpocket is not loud. He's not obvious. He's not wearing a name tag that says, hello, my name is Satan. It's not how he works. But he's scheming and he's watching. And if we don't know who he is or if he's even there, then you will lose the things that you have and you don't even know that they're missing. So we've got to identify our enemy. We've got to know who he is. And then number two, we've got to understand the battle. We've got to understand the battle. So it's not just about identifying the enemy. It's understanding how he works. How does the devil work? Now, it's important for us not to get too enamored with the devil. I really want to encourage you, do not watch horror movies that have demonic influences in them. Do not open yourself up to that. Sometimes I'll watch 5 minutes of a movie that I think is about suspense. I love a good suspense movie. But then I realize, this is demonic. And I turn it off. So we've got to understand the battle of how he's working and how he will get into the mind. And so if you misunderstand the battle, then you'll keep picking the wrong weapons. And so let's look at what it says again right here in verse 12. Let's see this. It says that our struggle is not against flesh and blood. We saw that. But look at this. But it's against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces. Now look at this. In the heavenly realms. Okay, so let's talk through this. This is not a physical fight. It's not physical. It's a spiritual fight. And it means that it's not happening out in the open. If you want to give this a title or a name or kind of think about it, it's almost like a spiritual Cold War. It's a different way to think of it. It's happening in our minds. That's where the war is taking place. The primary battleground that Satan has is not the space in between you and other people. The primary battleground of the devil is in the mind and in the heart. That's his battleground. So think of that. Understand how he works. He uses that within our homes, thought patterns, and sometimes it even leaks its way into the church. And so we've got this word right here, that third word in verse 12. It's the Greek word for that we have struggle. Do you see that word struggle? That's the Greek word pale. And this is what it means. It means hand-to-hand, close combat. Here's what I want you to understand. At the end of that verse 12, it says that our enemy is in the heavenly realms. And sometimes we think, that means that he's flying up in the clouds. But what the heavenly realms means, it just means that he is in our midst. And that it is close hand-to-hand combat. Paul is saying that he's not just out there, that this enemy is up close and personal. So this fight is in your mind. This fight is for your identity. This fight is up close in your marriage. It's in your children. It's in your witness. It's close. It's your faith. While we were going to camp this week, we were at Camp Tanglewood in Lawrence, Mississippi, in the middle of nowhere. If you've never heard of Lawrence, Mississippi, I have not met someone who has. I was telling them, we're going to Lawrence. They said, I've never heard of that. And I said, neither have I. And so you can imagine the kind of cell service that we had this week in Lawrence, Mississippi. We were in the middle of nowhere. And there were these moments, y'all, that I was standing still. And I had my phone out. And for like a solid 60 seconds, I had one bar of service. And I did not move. I didn't hold it up. I didn't hold it down. I didn't go outside. I didn't go inside. I stood still. And then all of a sudden, my service was gone. I couldn't look anything up. And I would sit there frustrated and trying to figure out, I was trying to look up this, trying to look up that, and I was trying to make this phone call, trying to get in contact with my family, all this kind of stuff. And I would sit there frustrated. And then it was back. And the whole time I realized I'm not moving. And here's the thing that I could have done. I could have rebooted the app that I was using. Could have rebooted it, force closed it, all that kind of stuff. I could have said, forget this. This is an old phone. It's not an old phone. It's actually a very new phone. But if it was an old phone, I could have blamed it on the phone and said, I need to toss this and get a new one. Some of y'all are thinking that yourself. You could have blamed it on the software. You don't have the most latest, greatest software. But the fact of the matter, it was none of those things. It was none of the apps or the phone or the software. The fact of the matter was the signal was not getting through. And that's how spiritual warfare works. We've got to understand the battle. We try to fix things on the surface. We think that it's something that we can fix. We change our schedule because it's too busy. But the real issue is spiritual burnout. We try to blame our spouse for the tension at home, but the enemy is sowing division. He is sowing contempt in your relationship behind the scenes. We buy things, and I'm prone to do this too. We buy things not because we need it, not even really because we want it, but we buy things because it lifts our mood. And we're self-medicating with buying something online when the problem is that our joy is not in the Lord. We get a new job or we chase a new opportunity and, thinking that a location is going to solve our frustration. I meet ministers who say, I'm just done with this church. I can't take them any further. And because of their own spiritual unhappiness, they move. They look for a different place, a different church, thinking that circumstances are going to change. And hear my heart. Sometimes that is very much the case, that God leaves a person and they are called to go somewhere else. But you know what? Wherever you go, there you are. And you take all the problems with you. We scroll for hours just to relax, but we're just numbing our spiritual convictions. We ghost people, or we withdraw from church. And we blame it. And I hear this. Oh, I just need some space. When the enemy is actually isolating you from godly community. Do you see how he's working? You see how he just uses these things? And so we have to realize that the battle is spiritual and it's not something that we can fix like my phone. It's not something I can just fix with better habits or practical solutions or stronger willpower or any of those things. The way that we do it is exactly what the Word tells us. And this is number 3 to write down, is to stand strong. We have to stand in God's strength. We have to stand in God's strength. Can we go back to verse 10? Let's go backwards. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Now here's what I want you to understand. It says, be strong in the Lord. That does not mean white knuckle it with a smile on your face saying God's in control. Now reality is He is in control. But it's not to white knuckle it, stand strong in the Lord. Here's what that word means. It literally means, be strong means be empowered. In other words, you don't manufacture the strength. You don't manufacture this strength and then give it a spiritual name and say, I'm just doing it in the Lord. No. It means that you receive strength from Him. Of course, we'll talk about armor next week, but here's what I want you to see. The strength to stand does not come from trying harder. Let's talk. The strength that you need in your daily life, whether you've got problems or whether you're just going through life, the strength that you need is not from trying harder. It comes from trusting deeper. Did you hear that? It's you receiving the strength. I want you to picture in your mind, well, I've got a picture up here. I'll put it up here on the screen. It's a house on fire. And the smoke is thick. And the flames are rising. I want you to picture this in your mind. A little child trapped inside that house. Man, I don't know if you can see it. Some lights are kind of bright, but you see all the firemen right there. And you've got this one right here on the right, and he's got a ladder. He's getting ready to go in. I want you to imagine that a child is trapped inside. And that child is not strong enough to escape on his own. And so he hears the firemen calling out. And because he's not able to escape on his own, he cries out. That child cries out in response. The fireman is saying, "Where are you?" And the child cries out and says, "I'm here. I'm over here." And then that fireman bursts through the smoke. He scoops up the child and he starts carrying them out. Let me ask you, in that scenario, who is doing the saving? Who's doing the saving? It's the firemen. Some of you may feel like your lives are burning down. And remember, we have an enemy. And I want you to hear this. Satan is a spiritual arsonist. He is trying to spark things in your relationships. He's trying to spark things in your emotions. He's trying to spark all types of things in your marriage or raising your kids or in your health. And he's trying to spark. And he does it very quietly. And before you know it, there is a huge blazing furnace. Satan is a spiritual enemy, a spiritual arsonist, and he sets all these fires. Stop trying to stand in your own strength and just let God carry you with His strength. Because the enemy is real and the battle is happening right now. And the only way to stand firm is to stand in Jesus. But it's not your strength. If you don't carry anything away from today, hear this, that you gain His strength. Let Him scoop you up as that little child in His arms and carry you to safety.